TTB. Music Podcast.
Bit like deja vu, this, isn't it? On so many levels. both on the recording setup and just the hey, podcasting. Remember when we used to do that?
And you are?
Yeah. Available for other podcasts.
Do you remember that time when we did try to stop podcasting?
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked as well as this, didn't it?
It did, yeah. It did quite well this time. It's good that we've taken a choice to decide most of this year's music has been shit by just not doing any podcasts or reviewing anything.
Not engaging with that.
Yeah.
2019.
It's like, first off the year now, fuck it.
Fuck off. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Yes.
Good.
Yes. We should do this more often.
We should, really.
If anyone's still listening out there, which they might, frankly, who knows? They might have just in that brief.
There's a lot of good podcasts out there. I think that's been half my problem.
Yes, that brief 6-month hiatus between the first one and the second one of the year.
Well, you know.
So anyway,
I blame David Tennant.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah,
you've forgotten how to do this.
I have. Yeah.
Normally, you list the albums. And
yeah, that's okay.
Give a review.
Correct. Okay.
And I sort of jump in occasionally and laugh.
So, because we've been so shit, for want of a better word, we're only going to do 4 albums rather than our usual 6. But don't worry.
Despair.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with 4 more. Oh, really? That's how exciting it is.
Oh.
Okay, so this one we're actually doing kind of what we used to do, which is reviewing stuff that's actually come out kind of recently. So we have Madonna, Madam X, Divine Comedy, Office Politics, Hot Chip, A Bath Full of Ecstasy, and something that came out 3.5 months ago, Sigrid Sucker Punch, that we felt we should review because for no other reason than Strangers was, if you remember rightly, our favourite track of last year.
Yeah, year before.
Yeah. So, anyway, without further ado, the return of Madge. Pete.
Oh, bastard. Right. Okay, so this
14th studio album.
14, eh? 14. So, obviously, before sitting down to listen to this, the only sort of reference I got to Madge in a recent work was that performance at the Eurovision Song Contest, which I watched for the first time in...
So I missed that,
14 years or something.
I have no idea how good, bad, indifferent that was.
It's same as always. We came bottom. But while they were deciding that the UK would come bottom of the European leagues, and we all made jokes about politics, the Madge came on and she did a track from her album, Madam X, which we have reviewed, and I'm not stalling for time. And the album itself, I think, is better than her performance that evening, which was widely sort of slated. Unfairly, I thought, because actually it's Madonna. So, come on, it's Madonna. She can still...
Well, she's doing the eye patch thing.
She's still got pipes. And actually, on this album, what has absolutely impressed, shocked, surprised, amazed me is that throughout the album, she still has got pipes. Vocally speaking, she's still up there with the best of Madonna, really. She's competing with herself. She's not competing with anyone else. I think in terms of her peers, some of whom are with us, some of whom aren't, and compared with her modern peers, I think she still holds above.
Okay.
In terms of lyrically, certainly vocally. Musically, bit of an interesting mix of styles, this one. I think there were times when Madonna was pushing into newer areas or collaborating, I actually thought the album was stronger. Where there was perhaps less of that or more a sort of reliance on traditional styles, it was weaker. But for me, not really my scene, but a fairly solid album. And I mean that in the best way.
Yeah, I found this... I was... Yeah. She kind of goes a bit full La Isla Bonita on this album, really, doesn't she?
Which I didn't mind, you see.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think it's genuinely nice that because obviously I think she's been living in Lisbon for the last few years, and she's obviously pulled in that influence of Spanish, Portuguese.
Which you hear throughout the album, that mixture of sort of Mediterranean.
Yes, they've got kind of that, and then for want of a better world music beats type things going on. And I say that kind of works reasonably well. Actually, it's quite interesting. It's quite engaging. It's not doing anything new per se, but it's quite fun. I quite like a Batuka, which has that kind of call and response style thing, and then you got the choir vocal thing that reminded me a bit of actually on that, and even on the track before. Is it on Future or God Control, where both those tracks I was thinking, remind me of Like a Prayer with the kind of thing. So I quite like that. But then you have Killers Who Are Partying, which is trying to be a serious kind of song, which I think lyrically is a bit naff, trite, even though the sentiment's good. And then you have that god-awful bit in the middle where it suddenly becomes today's pop music, and you have Crave and Crazy, which are both...
Yeah, Crazy I didn't like. And it's when it becomes today's pop music. When she's pushing into areas... and putting her own twist on it, whether you call it world music, you call it, Lisbon beats, if you wish.
Yes.
I just made that up. It sounds great. It's when she's sort of doing pop music. I guess that's what I was trying to say at the beginning. When she's trying to sort of imitate what's going on currently, I think that's where it falls down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
But it's still probably as good as, Taylor Swift's and Katy Perry's and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I think it's as you say, a solid record.
Yay.
There we say.
There you go. I've been waiting 6 months to get that. Sweet.
Moving on to the Divine Comedy, Office Politics. I suddenly can't remember what the last album was called. Although we did review the last album. That's about 5 years ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. Forgive you for not remembering.
I could have looked it up. Yeah. I've had months to do this.
You've got months to prepare for this.
As now.
Yes.
I will say it's always nice to have any kind of album that involves Neil Hannon.
Yeah.
Simply because he is frankly, one of our best and amusing and clever songwriters.
That for sure.
Certainly lyrically, and there is ample evidence of that again on this album. It's an album that's vaguely based upon the kind of work environment kind of thing, although even it admits it was kind of very loosely strung around that. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's quite a long album. It's in old money. It's a double album. But when it's good, which I think is most of the time, I think it's very good. Great start off. So you start with Q Jumper, Office Politics, Norma and Norma, Absolutely Obsolete, and Infernal Machines, which I think are all brilliant. Norma and Norma, current single and a big Radio 2 favourite, and quite rightly so, because it's a really, really beautiful song, but also wonderfully clever, because it is a song that's about this couple looking back on life, but then I love the fact that he manages to get the Normans and the Saxon reenactments kind of thing in towards the end in the lyrics, which is corny as hell, but actually still very good. And you got the 70s kind of glam of Infernal Machines, which I quite like to be on. You then get a totally daft middle section, which is with the type of songs that are really fun but don't necessarily warrant repeat listens. So Psychological Evaluation, which is a kind of vocoder conversation with himself, essentially. And then Synthesizer Service Centre Super Summer Sale, which I'm sure you liked because it managed to mention DM, Nin, and Pet Shop Boys.
They're all in there.
As well as listing virtually every synthesizer that's ever been made.
Exactly.
And then we get back on track, and again towards the end, I think we pick up really well. Again, Dark Days is a bit kind of Pink Floyd, Circle the Wall.
Yeah.
Two final tracks, which are both kind of odes to kind of ordinary kind of working people, I think, are both beautiful, which is After the Lord Made Show and When the Working Day is Done.
Yeah.
And there's also another silly song in there, which is Philip and Steve's Furniture Removal Company.
Which I thought was surprisingly good.
Which I also like as well, because the whole point of that is it's about Philip Glass and was it Steve Reich, isn't it?
Yeah.
Steve Reich, sorry, both famous American composers, who, according to urban myth, I suppose, once did kind of furniture removal. Although no one actually thinks it was true, but apparently Neil Hannon thought it was quite an interesting idea and quite funny, and particularly because Philip Glass is quite well known for doing kind of repetitive things. There's quite a lot of repetition at the start of the track as well, which is quite funny. So overall, I think it's whilst not the best Divine Comedy album, I think it's quite a strong record, but at the same time, it does feel a little long, and I think there's a very good album in a good album.
Yeah. I agree. And I mean this genuinely. There is a great, and you mentioned the 70s, sound of the 70s. There's a great alternative 80s album in here as well. And particularly the first half, or the first single album.
Yes.
It's a double set in Old Money. I thought he's really, and I think, again, reference to the long list of 80s originating acts that he listed, obviously, in I think it was Psychological Evaluation or the synthesizer one with the Nin reference. The Office theme, I think that's quite nice because it kind of loosely ties it together from start to finish, even on the tracks where it's not as obvious. There is sort of, it's alluded to, even in Norman and Norma, which is excellent. It is alluded to. I think the first half, the sort of more 80s half, is tighter.
Yes,
in terms of the themes and in terms of the sort of the songs themselves. Then it has that crazy middle bit, and then the second half, particularly latter second half, with the odd exception, is more like what you call traditional Divine Comedy. So, for example, you got Opportunity Knocks on there. It's a classic Divine Comedy song about somebody getting off on murdering their colleagues for their own advancement, which I just thought that's just a classic one of their sort of themes. Could have appeared on any album of theirs in the last 20 years. But, I mean, again, I mean that in a fully complimentary way. Tracks, I think you've mentioned all the ones I liked. Office Politics, obviously, with the Neil Tennant style vocals.
Yes.
Delivered by Neil Hannon. Very good. And When the Working Day is Done, I thought was a fantastic way to close the album. Although I was exhaustedly trudging my way home, and I felt like I did want to do myself in, having listened to it. But I thought it was very effective in that way.
There you go. On to Hot Chip, seventh studio album already. I can't believe that, actually.
Do you remember? Do you remember? We did the third and fourth.
Yeah.
Quite close back to back, I seem to recall. Or was it fourth and fifth? Who knows?
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah, a long time ago. Whichever the first one of those we did, I didn't like it particularly.
No, that's the one I really liked.
Yeah, I recall. Yeah. Anyway, to find out if we like this one or not.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Bath Full of Ecstasy. It's, again, as a theme, it was almost like a good trip down Hot Chip Lane.
Very good, like it.
Yeah, see if I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it begins quite joyously.
It does indeed.
It brings you up. It takes you to the love, and then the last couple of tracks sort of bring you gently back down. Although it has to be said, I think What Goes Up Must Come Down, and I thought the tracks Why Does My Mind, and particularly Clear Blue Skies, sort of the paranoia of coming down was reflected, I thought, there. So again, I jumped on the theme. I liked
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I liked it. The title track. First of all, good couple of opening tracks.
Excellent.
As I said,
tracks.
yeah, a couple of opening tracks really sort of put you in the mood for dancing, and a real reminder to me why I liked them so much so previously.
Yeah.
Particularly that sort of era of the sort of third, fourth, fifth album, and also liked the title track, which offered something a bit more soulful. It's kind of like that dirty soul of the sort of 70s, 80s. I really like that. Also really liked Hungry Child, which really did make me want to dance. And the surprisingly positive No God at the end, which again it sort of wrapped it up quite nicely. It brought you back, and then it just sort of gave you a little bit of love right at the end as well. So now overall for me, I'm trying to sort of remember where we were up to with Hot Chip. Obviously that there was one album back in the day I really enjoyed. Probably this one not so much, but I did really enjoy this album.
Yeah, I didn't mind this. I think it's definitely, as you're going to say, I think it's an album that definitely builds on rather than against what they've previously done.
Exactly. Exactly that.
And does quite a good job, I think, of balancing kind of the dance and kind of chill aspects of the band. I think this first half of the album for me is the better half of the album, and the half that I've definitely engaged me more.
For sure.
I found myself drifting away a bit in the second half of the album on all my listens to it, and having that feeling slightly of things kind of merging into one.
Yeah.
But I agree that No God is actually quite an interesting track at the end. It kind of, if you're kind of focused on that track in and of itself, it's actually quite a well constructed song.
Yeah, very clever.
I mean, obviously this album has some sadness to it because one of the co-producers, Philip Zadar, kind of fell off a building or whatever last month, and died. So it's kind of a sad point to the album.
Yeah.
But
was that before it came out?
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yeah, just before.
That's awful.
But yeah, I think it's. Dare I say it again? It's a solid Hot Chip album, rather than one going to be going round and saying, "Oh, you must listen to this." And our local. Our local craft beer seller also thinks it's a. Well, he probably thinks it's more an average Hot Chip album rather than a solid one.
Excellent. No, I say solid. On the solidometer, it's on the positive side.
Yeah, I think that's true. Finally, in this particular episode, I move on to the debut album from Sigrid. As I mentioned before, Strangers was our track of last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah.
Wow.
It came out.
The year before.
Well, it came out December of 2017.
Okay.
But
Makes sense.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And so the album came out in March, April.
Yeah.
And she spent most of the last 2 years pretty much just releasing singles and then touring off the back of singles. Understandably, there's quite a lot of expectation around the release of the album.
It's been a long time coming, this album, hasn't it?
Exactly, and because it's had sellout tours and lots of people saying positive things about her, so obviously some pressure in that sense. The album itself is made up of about half of stuff that had been previously released and half of stuff that was totally new. And I have to say, happily for me, this album hasn't disappointed me. It's pop music as it should be, as far as I'm concerned. It's short, snappy, tappy, average track time of 3.5 minutes. This is what it's like. I have to say, I've probably listened to this album more than any other album this year because it's been on kind of loop in our car. So this is the easiest one for me to review because I'm very familiar with this record. But this also lends to the fact of what I'm saying, the fact that despite that, I am saying positive things about it. You know, she basically tells simple tales of love, hate, being a young girl, woman in the modern world. And what I like about it is, because we listen to a lot of music just generally, and because I listen to, and both for this podcast and as parents of young girls particularly, whilst much modern pop music has that kind of homogenous kind of sound, this to me kind of retained a surprising distinctiveness and idiosyncratic charm, partly due to her vocal delivery, which I think is quite different from most of the other people out there. And you know, I've read some reviews saying, "Oh, you know, why didn't you take more risks? You know, we thought she should take more risks." Thinking, this is a debut album. You know, does she really need to be taking more risks now? And also, what's wrong with just delivering an album full of decent pop tunes?
Yeah.
So what I like about it is you do get killer pop songs like Strangers, Don't Feel Like Crying, Sucker Punch, Don't Kill My Vibe. But in between that, you also get things like Level Up and Dynamite, which are more kind of restrained, kind of mellow tunes, which I think work really well. And you know, I think if you want an album high on earworminess that comes in at kind of about 35 minutes, I think you're hard pushed to beat this album this year.
Yeah, agree. Agree again. How boring. It's a classic pop album. Whilst we waited a long time, well worth the wait. It's you know, Strangers aside, there are some really good pop tunes here. As you say, some really catchy numbers, some slower, sort of more thoughtful numbers. It's a remarkable debut. She clearly hasn't rushed this, and I think that pays off.
Yes.
And if you had to wait 3-4 years for the next one, I think it'd probably be worth the wait. I say Strangers aside because I think Strangers still holds up.
Oh, it's still a great song.
Great pop anthem. You know, it's on rotation now in our house. I played it to my own daughter for the first time last week as she was prepping for a brownie disco, and you know, she was the DJ. I was like very proud, and I introduced her to Strangers, and within only 30 seconds she was just like, love it. And it hasn't even got going at that point. Like,
true.
I was just like, no, wait for this bit. And in a way, the whole album's like that. It's just like you got to give it more than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You got to listen to the whole album because it's sort of just when you think it's sort of there, then it's there.
It is indeed.
Yeah,
yes.
and I thought that was just made me laugh. So yeah, no doubt this will continue to play in our respective houses.
So there,
and yours too.
Yes, and mine too. Should be. So, favourite album of the podcast?
Oh, this is tricky. Because I think Sigrid's great. What about yours? You do yours first.
It is probably Sigrid, actually. But again, that's partly due to the fact that I said
overexposure.
There is overexposure. There is overexposure, but that it has survived overexposure, and I still think it's good.
Well, looking across this podcast, they're all pretty solid.
Yes,
and you know,
if the Divine Comedy album was shorter, if it
was shorter,
you kind of knocked about kind of four or five tracks off the Divine Comedy album, I think that would definitely.
There's a great Divine Comedy album in there,
possibly win it, but.
So I'm going to agree with you. I think it's Sigrid, but I'm going to throw Hot Chipper, Bath Full of Ecstasy here as well.
Going to throw them in.
Go throw them in. Yeah.
The Bath Full of Ecstasy.
Indeed.
Okay, we will be back in a couple of weeks when we will be looking back a bit, because obviously we've missed some stuff apparently. So we're going to be reviewing 4 of the best reviewed albums of the year so far.
All right, is that how we're doing it? Okay.
So,
I look forward to that.
ladies and gents, that will involve Dave Psychodrama, Fountains DC Doggerel, Baroness Gold and Grey, and Weyer's Blood, Titanic Rising.
Excellent.
So, see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
No, really. A couple of weeks.
Really? Just a couple of weeks?
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like new, everything. Feel free to leave us a comment on our Facebook page, or you can email us, podcast@cttbmusic.com.